Ridge remained transfixed in the doorway, his eyes narrowing as the reality unfolded before him in ways he had never anticipated. His heart pounded against his ribs, each pulse stronger than the last, as his chest heaved and fell with the weight of unbelief. He had come here anticipating comfort, perhaps even a gentle moment of reassurance from Taylor, but instead he discovered the truth, which crushed his trust in an instant. For a long time he couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, and couldn't understand how all he knew about her, about their relationship, had been transformed into something else. His throat dried up, and when he finally spoke, the words were sharp, purposeful, and full of anger. "Taylor, how could you?" he growled, the 6 words piercing the air like a dagger. The silence that followed felt terrible, smothering, and almost loud in itself. Taylor's cheeks paled, her eyes darting away as if to avoid the heat in his gaze. She opened her mouth to explain, defend, and rescue even a sliver of what they had, but Ridge's voice thundered again before she could say a single word. "You lied to me," he snarled, his voice low and shaking with repressed rage. He ran his fingers through his hair and paced in little circles, as if motion could help him understand the torrent of emotions pouring inside. Betrayal wasn't new to him. Life in Los Angeles, life with Brooke, and life in the Forrester maelstrom had all taught him the pain of dishonesty and heartbreak. But this betrayal was different. This was Taylor, the woman who had always served as his safe harbor, the calm after the storm. And now, standing in the ashes of his fantasies, he questioned whether he had ever truly known her. Taylor grabbed for him, her voice shaking. "Please, Ridge, it isn't what you think. I made a mistake. I did not mean a mistake." Ridge snarled, backing away from her touch as if her fingertips had burnt him. "Do not insult me. Don't stand there pretending this is an accident you stumbled upon. You cheated. You have betrayed me. You ruined everything." His words were rough, laced with pain he couldn't hide. He clenched his fists at his sides, not in fury at her, but at himself, for trusting, believing, and letting his guard down when experience had shown him otherwise. With each passing second, the room felt smaller and the air became heavier. Taylor's breathing increased, and her eyes moistened as she attempted to calm herself. "I adore you, Ridge. That has not altered. I lost control and let my insecurities lead me to do something I later regretted. But just don't throw us away because of one error." Ridge shook his head, laughing sadly. "One mistake? Taylor, this was not a missed call or a forgotten meal. This was a betrayal. Do you understand what those 6 words meant when I stated them? They meant that I couldn't look at you the same way. I cannot believe you in the same way. Every commitment you've made seems empty today, and you want me to just get over it?" Taylor's tears flowed freely, and her body trembled as she attempted to get closer. "I felt lonely, Ridge. You've been torn between me and Brooke for so long, and I felt like I was losing you again. I wanted to feel wanted, only for a moment." Her confession cut through him more deeply than anything else. The mention of Brooke's name fueled the fire. Always Brooke. Always the triangle. The never-ending tug-of-war that left scars on everyone concerned. Ridge's thoughts returned to Brooke, the love of his life, the woman he could never truly let go of, no matter how hard he tried to develop a permanent relationship with Taylor. Perhaps this was Taylor's weakness, her wound, her fear of constantly coming second to Brooke. Perhaps her terror drove her into another man's arms. Ridge, however, saw this as no justification. "You can't use Brooke as an excuse," he yelled. "You cannot explain your betrayal by referring to the past. I've been open with you about my challenges, emotions, and the reality that Brooke will always be a part of my life. And you promised that you understood. But this demonstrates you never trusted me or us." Taylor covered her face and sobbed quietly. Ridge's rage subsided for a brief period, replaced by the agony of witnessing someone he once admired crumble before him. Even amid her misery, he couldn't ignore the voice in his head telling him that this wasn't about insecurity or loneliness, but about choice. Taylor chose to betray him, and decisions have repercussions. Ridge turned to leave, but Taylor's pleading voice stopped him. "Do not go to Brooke. Thank you, Ridge. Don't allow her use this to get you back in. That is what she will want. She'll use my error to prove she's a better woman, and she'll take you away from me again." Ridge paused, his back to her. He closed his eyes, the mention of Brooke triggering emotions he had worked so hard to suppress. Brooke, The lady who had broken his heart numerous times but still retained a piece of his soul. Would she accept him back if she learned of Taylor's betrayal? Will she even want him bruised and battered as he is? He did not know. All he knew was that the ground he was standing on with Taylor had fallen beneath him. The next day, Ridge arrived at Brooke's home unannounced and wobbly. Brooke responded with her usual friendliness, but her brow wrinkled as she saw his untidy appearance. "Ridge? What is wrong?" His voice cracked as he replied, "Taylor cheated." The words were cruel, but saying them out made the betrayal feel more genuine. Brooke's eyes widened, horror spreading across her exquisite features. For a moment she remained silent, as if debating whether to console him or remind him of the times he had chosen Taylor over her. But Brooke remained Brooke, and despite everything, her love for Ridge always outweighed her pride. She reached out and touched his arm softly. "I'm so sorry," she muttered. "You do not deserve it." Ridge's chest clenched, and his eyes met hers with a sensitivity he rarely displayed. "All these years, Brooke, I thought she was the one who could provide me with stability, who wouldn't hurt me the way we had damaged each other. I believed I could trust her. But I was wrong." Brooke sighed quietly, her hand resting on his arm. "Ridge, you have always understood where your heart truly resides. No matter how many times we've been apart, we always find our way back together. Maybe this is the universe reminding you of that." Her words sparked something deep within him, both soothing and disturbing. Was she correct? Had he been battling his fate all along by attempting to work things out with Taylor? Or was he simply a guy in need of peace, yearning for Brooke's familiarity after his world had collapsed? Ridge fought with his emotions as the days moved to nights. He attempted to confront Taylor again to see if there was anything left to salvage, but every time he looked at her, he saw betrayal carved into her features. Taylor cried, pleaded, and vowed to spend the rest of her life proving her love and commitment, but Ridge couldn't stop the echo of his own words, the 6 words that had ended everything. "Taylor, how could you?" They echoed in his thoughts like a terrible theme, a remembrance of the instant everything changed. Meanwhile, Brooke remained a steady presence, comforting him without pressuring him to make a decision. She understood Ridge needed time, but she also felt their story wasn't finished. The spark between them had never died, and now, with Taylor's error pulling down the walls Ridge had created, it blazed hotter than before. Ridge was split, as always, between 2 women, one who deceived him out of fear, and one who had shattered him before but still held his heart. The irony was not lost on him. Life, it appeared, would never let him escape the triangle that constituted his existence. However, this time the betrayal was too acute and profound to ignore. Taylor's error had tipped the scales, and though Ridge hated to admit it, he found himself drifting closer and closer to Brooke, as if fate had finally made the decision for him. And so the days passed, filled with rage, sorrow, longing, and meditation. Ridge replayed every memory, statement, broken pledge, and muttered vow. He stood at a crossroads once more, knowing that no matter which option he chose, the scars of Taylor's betrayal would follow him. And in his darkest moments, when he closed his eyes and allowed himself to feel rather than think, he realized the truth he'd been denying for years. His heart had always belonged to Brooke, and Taylor's betrayal may not have been the end of his story, but rather the painful beginning of finally accepting where he was meant to be. Taylor's betrayal has far-reaching consequences for both her and Ridge. Secrets had a way of pouring into every aspect of the Forrester household, overflowing across generations and drawing everyone into the storm. Ridge had tried to keep the truth quiet for the first few days, hoping to sort out his emotions alone before the murmurs began. But his children were not blind, and his absence from Taylor's home, his sleepless eyes, and his anxiety whenever her name was spoken presented a picture that words could never convey. Steffi was the one who cornered him initially. She stepped into his office at Forrester Creations with her arms crossed and a determined attitude. "Dad," she asked firmly, "what's going on between you and Mom? Don't say it's nothing. I know you too well. You have been distracted, irritated, and distant. Something happened, and I deserve to know what it is." Ridge stiffened in his chair, turning away from her penetrating stare. He wanted to shield her from the horrible truth, but Steffi had grown up in this world and knew how bitter betrayal was, how it stayed in the family like poison. She wasn't a small kid anymore, so sheltering her seemed unnecessary. Finally, Ridge breathed sharply. Your mother made a mistake. Steffi's forehead furrowed, and her voice became sharper. What type of error? Ridge paused, but his daughter's gaze begged honesty. She cheated Steffi. The words rang out like thunder, shaking Steffi to the core. She blinked, surprised, and her jaw tightened as the realization set in. No, she said quietly, shaking her head. No, she would not do it. Not Mom. Not after everything. Not after battling so hard to prove to you that she was a better choice than Brooke. Ridge's voice was weary and painful. I seen it firsthand. There is no denying it. She deceived me. Steffi's palms tightened into fists, rage replacing shock. How could she? After everything you've gone through, what have you given her? She ruined her chance. She wrecked us. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized what this meant. Not just for her parents' relationship, but also for the family unit she had worked so hard to maintain. Meanwhile, Thomas was the next to find out, but his reaction was far more complicated. When Ridge told him the truth, Thomas sat quietly for a long time, his countenance unreadable. Eventually he spoke. Dad, I'm not making excuses for what Mom did. She was wrong, and it saddens me to think about her betraying you. But can you honestly claim you've never betrayed her? You've run back to Brooke more times than I can remember. Maybe she thought she had already lost you. Ridge gazed at his son, frustrated. Do not defend it, Thomas. Don't you try to behave as if what she did wasn't her choice. Yes, I have made mistakes, but I have always been honest with your mother. This was deception. This was her destroying everything we built. Thomas sighed deeply, torn between loyalty to his mother and respect for his father. He loved them both, but he was fully aware of the consequences of betrayal. He'd spent years trying to prove himself and escape the shadow of his own mistakes, and now he saw his mother trapped in the same destructive cycle. Don't rush back to Brooke without first considering your options. Don't allow Mom's error be the reason you give up on her forever. Ridge's silence spoke louder than words could. His mind had already turned to Brooke, to the soothing tone of her words and the warmth of her arms. He didn't say anything out loud, but Thomas noticed it in his father's eyes. The notion of reconciliation with Brooke had already begun to take hold. Brooke soon received word, not only from Ridge, but also via a wave of family talks. Hope was the one who brought it up with her mother, and her voice was full of sympathy and satisfaction. Mom, have you heard? Taylor cheated on Dad. Brooke tried to appear compassionate, but deep inside she felt vindicated. Taylor had spent years presenting her as the homewrecker, incapable of loyalty, and constantly wrecking Ridge's happiness. The mask had slipped, revealing Taylor's weaknesses. Hope, Brooke replied quietly. I don't want to take pleasure in another person's agony. But you are correct, it does affect things. Ridge has some major decisions to make. Hope smirked knowingly. And we both know where his heart has always been. Brooke did not comment, but her quiet was sufficient. When Ridge eventually broke down in his father's study late one evening, he turned to Eric Forrester, the patriarch, for comfort. Sitting by the fire, Eric listened as Ridge vented his frustration and perplexity. Dad, I thought she was the one. I believed Taylor would be the one to bring me peace. But she betrayed me. She let fear and uncertainty destroy what we had. Eric's intelligent eyes softened. Ridge, I've lived long enough to understand that love is never simple. People make dreadful blunders from time to time, out of weakness or fear. But you must decide if this error defines your relationship with Taylor, or if it is the tipping point that sets you free. Ridge leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. I do not believe I can forgive her. Every time I look at her I just see treachery. And when I consider the future all I see is Brooke. She has always been there, Dad. No matter how badly we've harmed each other, she remains the constant. Eric smiled faintly, but his countenance conveyed anguish. Then perhaps the universe has given you clarity, even if it came through pain. Taylor's desperation rose as the days passed. She appeared to Ridge's office, his house, and even Brooke's doorstep, pleading for forgiveness. She insisted it had been a one-time error, a failure in judgment, a night of weakness. She told him she still loved him and would do anything to show it. But Ridge couldn't get the image out of his head. The sting of betrayal was still too raw. One evening, Brooke discovered Ridge alone in the Forrester mansion, With a drink of scotch. She approached slowly, with a kind but solid presence. You look lost, she murmured softly. Ridge looked at her, his eyes full of emotion. I'm lost, Logan. I don't know how to proceed. I'm not sure if I should even attempt with Taylor. Part of me wants to walk away forever, and part of me wonders if that makes me weak. Brooke sat next him, her hand on his. Walking away from treachery does not make you weak, Ridge. It makes you stronger. You deserve someone who will support you and not allow fear or insecurity push them into someone else's arms. You've given Taylor so many opportunities, and she's the one who damaged everything, not you. Ridge examined her face, noticing the seriousness in her eyes. He had always addressed her as Logan, a name that conveyed both affection and history. In that moment, he recognized how much he still loved her, and how much he had always loved her, despite his best efforts to convince himself differently. The fact was undeniable. Taylor's betrayal had destroyed something beyond repair, reopening the path to Brooke. Ridge felt a shift within him, the clarity he had been looking for. It wasn't about vengeance or proving Taylor wrong. It was about finally recognizing where his heart truly belonged. When he finally spoke, his tone was low but firm. Logan, I believe I have always known it was you. Brooke's eyes filled with tears as she grabbed his hand. Then it might be time to stop fighting it, Ridge. Maybe it's time to finally let us be who we were meant to be. For the first time since Taylor's betrayal, Ridge felt a sense of calm. The storm hadn't passed. There would be fallout, consequences, and families torn apart by his decision. But at least he knew where he stood. And that, after all these years of uncertainty, was worth everything.